Lisa Lampanelli began her career as a journalist for Rolling Stone. She quickly switched from news to comedy but maintained her keen observation skills. A comics comic of Lampanelli, Jim Carrey, said, "By boldly poking fun at everyone, Lisa releases us from a prison of cultural guilt. She's more than a stand-up, she's a standout." Howard Stern called her a true original and a brilliant comedy mind who'll steal the show every time. Known for saying things that most people are afraid to think, Lisa Lampanelli's raunchy, gut-busting performances are wildly popular at theaters across the US and Canada. Her most recent production, Stuffed, is an off-Broadway show, has been hailed as offering the strongest, funniest, and most affecting of her work. It includes laughter, genuine pain, insight, and true transformation. Hi, Lisa. It's great to see you again.
Hey, how you doing, Mama?
I'm really good. I'm
Good.
better seeing you.
You are like this year you were my biggest life changer ever.
Oh, I'm so honored to hear that.
Yeah, it's true. You know, that workshop at Kripalu was major for me. And because of you, I'm actually eating healthy, good food instead of filling my stomach with junk like I used to. So in a way, I kind of hate you, but I also kind of love you.
I understand that completely. I
Yes.
really get it. Yeah. What do you imagine if you think back on Kripalu and our time together? What were the turning points or the sparks? What made the difference?
It was just really funny because I went there thinking, okay, this woman's gonna tell me how to get to whatever, what weight she thinks I should be at. I didn't even know what hunger, hope, and healing was. And I was just like, well, it has to do with hunger and emotional eating, I bet. So I'm gonna sign up for it. Because with me, if it's about food or eating or emotional eating, I'm signing up. And then it ended up to be where you just said, I think if you start eating what your body wants, and it was just something that resonated with me about instead of what my mouth wants, it just really hit me right. And you telling me to find a functional medicine doctor just was life-changing because I found an awesome one. And she's like, oh, your weight will get to where it's supposed to if you really put things that are good inside you. I'm like, well, didn't think of that in 56 years, so I might as well try. So you changed everything. My energy's been insanely good, and I'm really grateful.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear it. It's
Yeah.
so inspiring to know that this can happen for people. And, what I've found over many years is that it happens when we have a good connection, like relationship actually matters.
Yeah.
So we're mutually inspiring each other, and that's so important for the path of recovery and wholeness and life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true because honestly, I've taken tons of seminars, workshops. I even went to a 28-day rehab for food addiction. And if you don't click with the participants or at least some of them, plus the person who's actually giving you the care, and you could see in them that, ooh, they walk the walk, it just doesn't, it used to just bounce right off of me. So whatever right time, right place it really was great.
Are you saying that I'm walking my walk?
You really seem to be. Unless you're a really good actress. I mean,
I'm not an actress.
There you go. You're nailing it.
Between the two of us, you're the actress, and I'm learning how to act.
Want to know another way you changed my life that I will never forget? Because it has nothing to do with food. You had talked to me about how you had broken your hips. Remember that story? And you said that I said, oh my God, how did you do that? I felt must be a big sports injury. You go, no, I had my feet up on the dashboard of the car. Do you know, every time I go to do that now, I take them down. I'm like, I am no way breaking my hips at this age. It's going to be from a fall. That's fine. But I'm not making that mistake. So thank you. And my hips, thank you.
Glad to hear it. Yeah.
Yes.
So a few moments back, you were saying if food or eating or hunger are involved, like I'm there.
Oh, yeah.
What was your history like?
Oh my God. Okay. Well, I started emotionally overeating probably when I went away to college. And, I really back then didn't know that was emotional eating. I just knew it was difficult to be away from home. I knew that food was my only friend. And I was like, okay, food's kind of filling the hole. So I really struggled with my weight and still do. We all do. I don't think it ever does end. I think I'll be 80 and still every day be making choices, instead of going, oh, I've got this mastered. There's no such thing. So I tried everything. I tried every diet program that you could mention. every fad diet, every good diet, every exercise method, and nothing stuck. So I decided, okay, I'm going to take food workshops at Kripalu. I'm going to take them at Canyon Ranch. I'm going to go and buy a house at Canyon Ranch. I went to, like I said, 28-day food rehab, anything and everything. Everyone in Janine Roth's books. Went to 3 Janine Roth workshops. And it's funny, nothing ever stuck until I was ready to do it. I think that's the whole thing. I got the weight loss surgery when I was ready. And the reason the weight's staying off is because I was ready. So it's this thing where it's like, okay, maybe I wasn't ready to take the full step, but at least I tried along the way. And because of all that, it finally ended up where I'm supposed to be now, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it feels like it to me when I'm sitting with you right now. Like there's a sense of Lisa is at Lisa's best as a person, integrated. I'm not saying you're complete or you're going to stop growing, but there's a feeling like, yes, that's what I get from your voice tone, your body language, your transparency, your genuineness. Yeah.
I feel like I am the best I can be right now. And it is pretty funny because I've had setbacks over the summer where, you know, it's been stressful because I'm trying this whole new venture. Because when you do a play, and especially a play with emotional content about food and body image, it gets really emotional. And I love having control, yet I have a team and I have to trust them. And I hate not, you know, I want people to earn trust immediately, which is impossible because it has to grow. So I go, wow, I had setback after setback, but I'm still sort of getting calm. I'm still not going insane. I'm still not screaming and yelling at people. And I'm still eating at least 80% good food. I go by 80-20. I go, if I can succeed 80% of the time, I'm fine. So yeah, it feels like I'm sort of at the best I could be right at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. So one reason that I wanted to have you be available to our audience for this telesummit is because there's several things you're doing uniquely. And one of those is you are telling your story and you're also telling stories as an actor, as a playwright now. Can you tell people what the project is that you're working on? I have some questions to ask you about how this has evolved, but let's just name the project first so they can get excited about it.
Yes, yes. I have a play that I've written called Stuffed, which is basically, I used to call it sort of like the vagina monologues, but about food and body image. Because I was shocked when I saw that, when I decided to write about my own food and body image experiences as a play, it originally was a one-person show. And it didn't resonate enough. To me, it felt like, well, I'm just talking about me. I bet there's all types of women and with all types of food and body image problems. So I put in a character of an anorexic, put in a character of a big girl who likes herself, a character of a skinny girl who can't gain weight. And I was like, okay, there must have been a play written about this subject. There must have been. This is so common. Every woman I know has some issue with food or body image. And there wasn't. I was like, oh, there's a void we need to fill here. So I wrote it. It was well received at a nonprofit theater last year. And it's opening October 5th at my dream theater, which was where the Vagina Monologue started, the West Side Theater. And I'm like, wow, I guess this was meant to be. And again, I think it's just going where your heart tells you to go without any fear and going, hey, what's the worst that can happen? It could fail miserably and then I'll learn something.
That's a great attitude.
Yeah.
What would you say to people, particularly because a lot of the people that I work with, isolation is a big factor for them, or keeping their story hidden is a big protective mechanism. What would you say about the importance of discovering our stories and telling them?
Well, as you know, shame is the thing that keeps everybody back and holds you back. And, you know, secrets are the enemy. And the minute, I remember listening to the first recordings from the work sessions of this show when I was just telling my story to this co-writer I had who was kind of pulling it out of me. And I was so ashamed. And the things I was ashamed of, now that I talk about them, 90% of people go through these, maybe more. And I was so ashamed of how I ate or how I didn't move or things I ate or how I sort of tried to get rid of food, et cetera. And I'm like, oh my God. If I'm not, you know, putting down other people for doing that stuff, why am I so ashamed of my own behavior? You know, I was ashamed that I ate through all my money that my parents had given me for college. You know, I felt the guilt that, oh, my parents worked so hard. You know what? thank God I didn't commit a crime. I didn't go out and, do anything illegal to get money. Like, I ate food.
Yeah.
Why is that so bad? So I think just me telling my story, then I get emails from people, even in the limited run of the show last year, emails from people saying, oh, here's what I did. I'll get Facebook posts going, I've gained and lost 250 pounds over the last few years. And you go, oh, because I was open, they were open.
Yeah.
And that's why I said these 4 women's story have to come to light, because yes, you're ashamed at first, and then you realize we didn't do anything wrong. We were just coping.
Yeah. It wasn't so egregious.
I know.
Condemning.
Yeah. I love that we would never beat up our best friend for what we beat ourselves up for. It's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how did you manage before you had your like awakening or self-kindness, which I'm going to call that? What did you do to kind of, I don't know, numb or distract yourself from the pain you were in?
Meaning using food?
Well, you were using food and, other things to kind of cope. But what did you do when you had to then like go out in public or what did you tell yourself about, oh, here I'm doing this. Like, how did you manage that part? You're a public presence.
Right. So I'd always be like, well, I'm the fat girl, well, hey, it's funny and fat and funny. And I was like, well, if I lose weight, I mean, believe me, it crossed my mind. If I lose weight, I won't be funny anymore. I mean, I remember when Jonah Hill lost his weight for the first time, people were like, well, he's not funny anymore. And I'm like, yeah, but he got nominated for 2 Oscars, so I think he's okay. So we get more genuine and vulnerable if we take off those layers, if we want to. So I think there was the fear of like, oh, I'll lose my sense of humor. And then you realize you had your sense of humor all along. You had it when you were born, and you weren't overweight. So I think when I was able to go, okay, you know what? I don't have to stay unhealthy, because the big thing is health. And also, you know what? If I could have ever been the big girl who liked herself and accepted herself and had that really non-defensive, confident attitude, boy, that would have been great. I just didn't have that role model to me. I didn't learn how to do that. My mother had a lot of self-hate and worthiness issues around weight and food. And the poor thing, she probably still does. And I got compassion for her. And then I think I got compassion for me. So I think a lot of it was me going, I can shed these things and it doesn't diminish who I am. And I'll still be a comic and funny. And, I'll have the career I'm supposed to have. And we'll just take it as it comes.
Yeah. How did you know you were funny? How did humor come into your life like this?
Well, it's really wild because I have a book, I'd written my autobiography a few years ago, and one of the chapters were like firsts in my life. And one was the first time I said something funny was when I was 8 years old at my Aunt Rose's house. Oh, I loved Aunt Rose. It was my dad's aunt. She was the best. And I remember that it got a big laugh, because when you're 8, it's really cute, but then I remember repeating it and nobody laughed. It was all crickets, them looking at me. And I'm like, oh, you don't milk a joke. So I learned early on, okay, I can be clever, but it took me till I was 30 to go, I have the, stomach and guts to try this. Because it's really a weird profession. You don't even know how you're supposed to start. Like, I'd say to friends, like, what do you think they do as stand-ups? Do they just stand up and start talking? And they'd be like, I guess. And I was like, well, that's too scary. So I was lucky enough that I saw that some guy was teaching a comedy class and just how to kind of get a 5-minute bit together. And I said, okay, this is right for me. And it happened to come at the right time. And I always say, I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but I was like, oh, humor really saved me, because I was feeling kind of like despair over, I'm really not feeling what I'm doing for a living, which was journalism. I knew I was never going to be great at it. I knew I was okay, but I didn't want to be just okay at something. Like, we all know when our calling comes along. And luckily at 30 years old, it was like, oh, okay, this is something that has my name on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, in yoga, we talk about being in alignment. We don't just mean that physically,
right,
but also being in alignment with what's meant to come through us. When you line up with your dharma, which is going to be different than my dharma and different than Mojo's dharma, but when you're in it, it feels like your life flourishes.
So much so, because I remember I was driving up to Connecticut. My first little nephew was born. I have 8 nieces and nephews. And Blaze was born, and I was driving up from the city to see him in like near Hartford, Connecticut. And I remember hearing an ad on the radio for this company called Rent a DJ. And I go, wow, I bet if I learn how to talk on a microphone at, DJing, I'll then maybe be able to do stand-up. Like, okay, like it looked like a good progression, and it was. So I got a job there. I did very well, quit the day job. Then I saw this comedy class advertisement. I'm like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. And I remember years later, I had done my first TV show and done my first appearance on Howard Stern, who's been a huge champion of mine. And I was sitting at this famous club that night, and I was in tears because I didn't even have an agent, but I was doing all this other stuff. And somebody said to me, you look at your career every year, is it better than, or your life, look, is it better than the previous year? And I'd be like, oh yeah. And he goes, then you're fine. So you're fine if you can just go, I'm on the right track. And it takes patience and hard work, but as you know, if it's supposed to happen, it happens. And that's not just a saying.
Yeah. I feel that the same in my life. Yeah. Now, just going back to when each of us had our difficult and painful histories, I know that I didn't feel it was funny at the time that I was involved in my behaviors. I couldn't find humor in what I was doing. I wouldn't say that my behaviors today were funny in some way, but I can have a kind of perspective with affection and consideration and like tenderness. Like there I was doing that. When it was painful, what voice tone came to you on the inside? How did you talk to yourself when you were in the pain of, let's say, binging or emotionally eating?
It was always angry. There was no empathy, no sympathy, no kindness. It was just like, oh, great, you fat, whatever. You're going to stay like that your whole life. Great. You lost 7 pounds. Now you had to F it up again and gain it back, plus some, and and then it was like, well, that has to stop, but that's not easy. So I still fight that. And I'm so glad, again, to go 20% of the day, I'll be lousy, but then I'll go, well, there's tomorrow. So I don't know what the shift was. I think it was being kinder to other people and their struggles, because I found that hard too. Like I even still find that hard. Like when I'll have a friend who won't lose weight, or I have a friend who won't stop dating the wrong men, I'll be just like, what's wrong with this one? And I go, hey, you did it too. You realized it. When you realized it, they're not there yet. And guess what? I'm not there yet with a lot of areas too. So people could be getting mad at me also, but it was always angry, judgy. And what's weird is, and it really makes me mad, my parents never said anything like that to me. So I go, where did I get it? Where did I get that voice? And I know it's because of how they talk to themselves, and not each other, themselves. I just heard my mother hating herself about her weight. My father hating that he wasn't, probably, living the artistic life he should have been living. And it was so sad to me. So I go, well, if I can have compassion for them, I could do it for me too.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's an interesting thing you're noticing right there, because you took in your mother's voice, even though it was directed from her to her.
Yeah.
Your father's narrative about him was directed from him to him.
Right.
But we're in proximity and we're soaking that in. Yeah. And then it can become like our voices on the inside. So in a way, your parents' stories are a part of you, as my parents' stories are a part of me. How does getting to know other people's stories in the project that you're doing, and like putting yourself in their story, how is that for you, and how do you do it? How do you place yourself in the other story?
Yeah, that was hard because, of course we judge people who have different problems than us, because we're like, well, if I could conquer that, why didn't they? How can anyone binge and purge? How could anyone take a bunch of laxatives? How could anyone be fat and like themselves? How could any skinny girl who can't gain weight not feel just grateful and happy? And then I started interviewing women who have all those issues, talking to them at depth, at length, and deep conversations that were really tearful and hard, and going, oh God, we're all the same. Like every one of us is the same. We just do it differently. We all have the voice. They talk in anorexia a lot about having the voice. And you go, well, fat people have it too. When I was overweight, or even now, I'll sometimes go, what the F is wrong with you? Stop it. Like I said, so we're all the same. It's wild how we all struggle, but those perceived differences keep us apart. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So how is this changing your humor? Like as a comic,
all this, like, I would call it pretty remarkable growth and perspective changing and expanding your view. And if shame and anger were so big then, are they still part of humor now? How does this change things for you?
Well, I think, first of all, when I lost the weight, I realized it had been sort of a protective mechanism and a mask, if you will. And I was like, well, I'm just going to show them who I am now, because I kind of like, I shed that first layer.
Mm-hmm.
So I started telling more stories that were based in reality, like about my divorce, about my dating, about my eating, about my struggles with food. But I always, in my stand-up, made sure, this is not therapy. You give them punchlines. So if I do a joke about all the diets I tried, I'm going to tell the truth and tell you how ridiculous they all are, but I'm going to have punchlines. So I have it ingrained in me. The audience comes first and foremost. It's to connect with them and give them a night off from their problems.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey calls it, comics are freers of people's concerns. You get to, for a night, free them of what their troubles are.
Yeah.
So, but I found, like, even now I tell stuff that's way more real about my feelings, about why I didn't have kids ever, about guilt that I feel when I say a particular joke and I'm worried somebody in the audience is upset, about how I'm kind of offended that every time I mention a weight loss I have, they clap, when really it's way harder living in this country as a fat person because of how we're treated than losing weight. So I love that I'm being more real in subject matter. And then I trust myself enough as a pro to get to the real funny stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go to that moment right there, because that's really poignant what you said. It's harder to live in this country as a person in a bigger body, as a fat person, than it is to lose the weight. Can you say more about that? I know some of our listeners will really benefit from what you have to say.
It's so true. I get so mad. I was speaking to, in my play, Stuffed, we cast Nikki Blonsky, the girl who played Tracy in Hairspray, in the movie. So she's really famous for having body positivity, and she's a big girl, and she's adorable and cute. And we were saying this yesterday, how fat, quote unquote, is a really acceptable insult on the streets. And you cannot call anyone anything, but if you call somebody fat, you will not get in trouble. So I can't go up to so-and-so and call them, any ethnic slur, any racial slur, any sexual slur, but boy, I would get in trouble. You can call anyone fat anytime you want, and people laugh, or they think it's fine because, yeah, she deserves it, because she should be ashamed of herself. So I hated that about walking around every day, not meeting people, look in the eye, not being able to look in not only a mirror, but just in the store window, because you're like, oh, I don't have the self-esteem today to even look at that reflection. When you get on an airplane, and everybody's looking at you going, and they're praying that you don't sit next to them. Yes, is it, a third world problem or first world problem? Yeah, first world, but it still hurts a lot, where you're sitting next to somebody with a screaming baby and you're the bigger problem, So I talk a lot about that stuff, being on, I was on Celebrity Apprentice with Donald Trump, and he would go around the room and compliment all the women, and I was 248 pounds. Of course he's not going to compliment me, but accepting that and going, oh God, I'm one of the guys. I'm always going to be viewed as less than, and which stinks that I couldn't have just thought about myself as equal and put that vibe out there. If I could have done that, it's a different way to solve a problem, or at least work on it. But yeah, I think it's really hard to be big in at least this country. This is the only country I know, but I mean, it's really tough.
Yeah, I haven't seen your stand-up show, unfortunately. But what do you say when the audience claps? You're saying your weight loss and they clap, they're like celebrating you did that. What are you saying back that might open their eyes about this?
Well, I literally just started doing this bit last week. That's so funny. I said something like, I said, I find it really interesting that you guys clap when I said I lost 107 pounds. I go, that's great and everything, and that's like really nice of you. I go, but you know what? Losing that weight was easy compared to what really you should be applauding, that I lived for 32 years in a fat body and survived because of the way skinny people, no, I didn't say that. I said the way you're treated by other people. And then I tell a story about the airplane. I tell a story about Trump, and I'm just like, go into how that hurts your feelings. Of course there's punchlines in it. Of course there's snappy comebacks by me.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you have to like show how you would have acted or how you felt, you know, but I just tell the truth. I'm just like, I tell people what it is.
Yeah. Well, and you're giving them a chance to shift their perspective.
I think it's an interesting perspective because nobody sees that coming. Of course we're applauding you. And that's great that they applaud. Come on, who doesn't love applause no matter what it's for? But let's give some credit where it's due. Give me as much applause for living without killing myself that I was treated like crap for 32 years. And some people are treated even worse.
Yeah. 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 I'm so glad you're putting that in your show and giving people a chance to really like feel it and feel whether they can take it in at that moment or not. We've all kind of contributed to that bias if we've been a part of our conditioning without examining our conditioning.
So true.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I used to have a lot of shame around weight and career, things like at one point, probably about a year ago, I was really worried about ticket sales, not for the play because that's a new venture, but about comedy ticket sales. So I was getting really nervous because I'm like, oh, you don't sustain this level forever. It's hard. Everybody has, you know, peaks and valleys. And I'm like, why do I have shame around weight and career and about nothing else?
Mm-hmm.
My face, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about my big nose, my big ears, and my old face. What do I care? You know what it is? There's shame around things we think we should be able to control. So I should be ashamed that I ever gained weight. I should be ashamed that my career isn't selling out Madison Square Garden. It's like, really? Should I? And I was like, I'm not having shame about that stuff. I'm pretty freaking good the way I am. And I'm pretty lucky that I even got to that level.
Yeah. Yeah, I celebrate what you're saying. That's why I'm smiling as you're saying.
You know what I mean? No, because like, isn't it weird?
Put the shame overboard and recognize what goodness is already happening.
Right.
And when you toss shame overboard, you're both going to float a little bit better in the ocean of life. And why not? We're not here that long, so we don't have to make it harder for ourselves than it is.
Right. Good point.
Now you have an interesting lifestyle where sometimes you're working really late. I think you drove from Kripalu in the middle of the night, leaving our time together to go to a show. And I just wonder how people withstand the lifestyle that is a part of the entertainment industry and take care of themselves and manage. They must have their own shame experiences as performers or entertainers.
Right.
What can you say about the culture of that?
Well, I'm really lucky because I have, I was never an alcohol or drug person. And it was so funny. My ex-husband, who I used to travel with on the road, he would come with me. He'd go, with the hours we have, how do people drink and do drugs? And I go, I have no idea. We are so uncool. Like we don't do anything. I said, yeah, we'll eat, but that's about it. But I just think if you go into it with the gratitude thing, I think gratitude, the word used to make me sick because it was just thrown around by everybody. Gratitude journal. I thought it was so queer. But then I'm like, okay, you know the saying, resentment can't coexist with gratitude.
Yeah.
So if I'm sitting there I am the most fortunate person that I get to fly to a really nice hotel and perform and say whatever I want, unedited, for however much time I want, over 45 minutes. Like I get to 45, or I could say an hour and a half, 2 hours. Who cares? Nobody's telling me to get off. I get to do that unedited. Oh my God. So you go, what am I going to be mad that I didn't get enough sleep? You know what I mean? And then you make up for it. That's what I have to do as a human, is go, okay, these next 2 days are going to be pretty hard. You bring your suitcase of food. Ever since I met you, I never used to do this. I bring a friggin' NutriBullet. I can't even believe I'm saying that. I bought the little one for my suitcase. Oh God, you turned me into monster. I literally have all my healthy snacks and all my all natural crap, and it's the roll-on suitcase. I have 2 suitcases I ship, and that it is so funny. So I think if I know I'm going to make up my sleep when I can, when I get home, and take that full day of self-care, but I eat well on the road and take those supplements and vitamins that the doctor said, I'll be fine. So I think it's mostly combating it with gratitude and just literally healthy living as much as I can.
Yeah. Yeah, in Hunger, Hope, and Healing, I talk about one of the life skills is personal buoyancy, like how resilient, how floatable, how bounce backable are we?
Right.
And we can't just think of our resilience as like hardening up and pushing through. Resilience is not that. Resilience and buoyancy are like, what am I inputting to renew, to take care of my vitality, given what the expenses might be?
Right.
Like flying on an airplane is a little bit expensive to your vitality. So what do you do to pre-resource before being on the airplane? Like maybe hydrating a little bit more because it's dehydrating to be on the airplane. But really looking at your life balance and saying, where do I need an infusion of care?
Yep.
Where can I lessen the harmful ways to do this and watch it balance out really?
That's a great point. I love that buoyancy. I'm going to remember that word. I like it. And also I think a lot of it comes through with your attitude. Like, honestly, I stay, if the word is buoyant, to the extent that if I'm on a plane or in the airport, say hi to somebody, help someone with a suitcase. Trust me, I'm no saint. But boy, the second I freaking help a little kid with a suitcase, go, oh, do you need help? Or, oh my God, you're so cute. Or see a dog and go, who's a good boy? I'm like, oh, that adds to it. So I used to travel like, oh, this is so hard. And then I'm like, wow, your life is pretty freaking good. So I think that adds to it too. So, and also it does help to say, okay, when that plane lands Sunday and I'm at my house, there's 24 hours that I literally don't get dressed. And that's okay. We need that one day a week where we are not even alive, which it makes up for a lot. And we know sleep, unfortunately, sleep's one of the most important things in the world. And it helps with the weight too, because, you know, sleep deprivation contributes to weight gain and also you feeling like not healthy. So you got to build it in.
Yeah, you're kind of talking about cocooning when you get home, right? You've got like a
so
24-hour cocoon, right?
Oh, and I literally will sit there. And sometimes, honestly, I hate to say this in front of him, but sometimes I'll be like, Jackie, who's my assistant, I go, can you keep Parker an extra day because I need my alone time? Like, I love him, but sometimes I'm like, I don't need you waking me up at 6, you know? So it's, you know, your limits, you know, your boundaries, but it sometimes takes you to this age to figure it out at least as much as you've got it figured out.
Yeah. So Lisa, do you think that in your experience, weight loss and improving like healthy foods, has this helped your perspective to shift? Because as you're talking, your perspective is really stabilized and it's cohesive. I listen for this as a yoga therapist. I'm thinking, okay, is it stable, cohesive, energized, fluid? It includes other people, it's connected.
Yes.
And you're describing yourself as a person who used to be sort of miserable traveling or maybe more like condemning of other people's problems. Yep. How did the perspective shift? What was the timing? Did it coincide with weight loss and healthy foods, or did it come after or before? What can you say about that?
Yeah, I think it was sort of the perfect storm. Like, it couldn't be ignored anymore. Like, once the doctor said, you know, how many people do you know at your weight who lived till 70? And this was, you know, before the surgery. I was like, oh my God. So that was like the first big wake up call. And then there was the event, you know, after the weight loss, it's like, oh, I'm only eating crummy food and I have no energy, but hey, I know that'll change someday when it's supposed to. And then, you know, with my father getting ill and then me being of service to him and then missing being of service to him. So writing the play to be of service to others. I think it's just all the perfect storm comes together. And then you're like, oh, suddenly I have a life. I'm not just working. I have like this fuller life and more calmness around food, more calmness around, you know, the issue of relationships or family or my mom or whatever. And then having your eyes open enough to when I take, like, for example, your workshop, to go, oh, she knows what I'm talking about. Like, I'm going to ask her about this. How do I get healthy foods in my life? And who'd ever, my friends die laughing seeing me drink green stuff. They're like, you're kidding. Like, where did this monster come from? So I just think it has to be like, but you have to be open to it. It has to like converge when you're ready to hear it.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I asked you earlier about the importance of storytelling in your life and also getting to live in somebody else's story. And your friends are watching a new story chapter in your life. How is it changing them?
How's it what?
How is it changing them?
Oh my God. Okay. First of all, my best friend of 30 years is constantly laughing at me because, and it adds some levity to her life. I know she gets tickled by this because she's somebody who needs to lighten up and laugh more. because she used to come over my house 2 years ago with green drinks, and I would be like, you're such an idiot, take that out of my house. So I was just like, there's nothing good in that, it tastes disgusting. And of course it's freaking great, like it's delicious. So like I would elect to drink anything green right now. So what it adds, I think, to her life is a little validation of, oh, you know what, I'm on the right track too. Like maybe she's learned by my example, oh yeah, I lived as an example to Lisa, but I didn't push it. And then that in turn helps me go, oh, remember Vicky wasn't pushy? I shouldn't be pushy to my other friends. So it's funny how it all feeds itself and feeds each other. And even with my mother, it's like, you know what? I used to be on her constantly about food because I was so afraid of her dying early. Do you know, the minute I lightened up, she comes home from the doctor, she says, oh, the doctor said I'm eating like a bird. I lost 15 pounds. I go, with meat. So the minute I stop my harping. So I just think it's hysterical that that's what happens and affects people around you.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Yeah. So speaking of that, you had come to Kripalu and it was a group event. We weren't just there by each other. It was just you and I.
Right.
And I just wonder, without, revealing anybody's identity or talking about other people, but your story was unique. Their stories are unique, but there was a shared intimacy and camaraderie and trust. And I wonder what you could say about that in terms of how it could benefit other people to start trusting their own story is not so unique and painful, that somebody else's pain might be medicinal for them to be able to offer kindness towards. What do you think happened in that group setting for us together?
I think it's almost like first of all, that was such a great group. Oh my God. And you need to take credit for that because you make the people be more open, but you give an example of openness that it obviously works. So it starts from the top. I think when people are in groups like that, and that's how I force myself to talk. I love talking, obviously, but those groups, the first time you talk, your hands are almost shaking. I speak for a living and my hands were shaking a little. I think what I thought was maybe somebody can feel better or less alone by this. So it's almost like you have to get out of your own head and go, who am I helping? Because sometimes, we don't all want to be so codependent that we're always, let me help everyone but myself. But you're helping yourself and them. So sometimes we got to just go, whatever I say here is confidential. It's not going to be more freaky than anybody else's. And you know what? Let me get out of my own head and get my head out of my butt and just tell somebody. And you see, then the more you tell, the more you want to tell because people are nodding. Oh my God, I love those first few moments you speak and everybody's like, and that's genuine. Like nobody's acting in those things. So I love that group. Oh, you put together a nice, safe, and it's safe, man. You just feel like this isn't going anywhere else.
Yeah. Well, one of the principles of recovery, when I put hunger, hope, and healing together, is one of the principles is called ending the isolation. And it's stuff like, helping the child with their suitcase on the airplane, put it up, or saying hi to a stranger in the airport. So there's a sense of connection that lessens our isolation. But it's also this, when you're able to be in a group setting for the purpose of healing, for example, and you can say what's true, almost pushing through where shame would not want you to speak. Shame wants us to stay isolated and to be more secretive about our circumstances. And it's done that for a long time. Yep. So when we start speaking and we're not getting rejected, analyzed, manipulated, coerced, doubted, questioned, overrun by the other group members, we can say it and we're getting those head nods. We're getting confirmation. This is okay to say this. It's okay to let it out. And we're all made more tender and courageous by it. So ending isolation is so big.
Yeah, the isolation, it just is so sad to me to think about, those times where I felt like I couldn't tell anybody anything. And boy, if I had just opened my mouth, there'd been like 80 people in a dorm or whatever in college or whatever, at least 3, 4 going, I know, oh my God, me too. Mm-hmm. And I think I was just saying to a different interviewer today, I was like, the difference between me and everybody else who doesn't do anything is I go, what's the worst that can happen? But I don't even care. Like, if it's the worst thing ever, like I'm never going to be homeless. Like that's the worst thing I could ever think of. I do it. So you go to yourself, if I share this, what's the worst thing that can happen? And then only the best stuff happens. So I really, I applaud everybody who opens their mouth in that situation, because they not only receive a gift, they give one or more.
Yeah. And so often when we come together in those settings, just like in your play, Stuffed, people are coming from different backgrounds and somewhat different behaviors. Somebody might be a profound restrictor, both in terms of food intake and calories and in terms of sharing, like speaking with others. And someone else might be a binger and just kind of consuming food, but may not speak that much about their experience. And when those two people start talking and the persona kind of gets let down a little bit, we realize, oh, there's a kind of common ground here in shame and vulnerability, right, and love. Those mutual experiences of shame and vulnerability and love, they start to flower through us. Right. And otherwise, we're telling ourselves, they won't understand me. My story doesn't matter. It won't help anybody else. Mine is worse. Mine's not bad enough. My story's not egregious enough. That's a lot, like people, they won't give themselves credit for feeling the pain they've been in, because they look back in their life and they say, it wasn't so bad. Why am I so fucked up?
Yeah. Like
yourself.
I remember being in that food rehab, and it was literally 28 girls who were anorexic or bulimic or both, and me and another overeater, or I should say, compulsive overeater who held weight. And I remember just feeling like I have no problems compared to these girls. I mean, their life could end tomorrow. I mean, some of these girls were really in rough shape. And I started crying at one meeting, and I said something about, I don't feel like I'm entitled to share because I'm not on death's doorstep. I'm like taking up your time. And this girl said, you could die like us. It'll take longer, but you could. So you have every right to speak. And I was like, oh my God, what a great girl, and what a great thing to say. And I'm like, you're right, I am worthy to speak. I'm not going to be delusional and take up everybody's time. That's I have hot buttons with that too. I kind of hate that when it's like, okay, enough out of you. But that's something I got to work on. Why am I impatient with that person who has to get there, and it takes a long time for them to get there? So it's always goes back to us going, stop judging them, stop judging us, and they're just doing the best they can, and so are you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The moment she said that to you was also, I imagine, it was an important part of her recovery.
Yeah, that's what they say with recovery. You help other people by, not only asking for help, but, she hears her own words, to herself too, which is really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Lisa, we're going to spend just a few more minutes together, and I don't want to ask all the questions myself. I'm wondering if you were to imagine a question somebody hearing your story might ask you, what would that be? What do you think they're like, oh, is she really getting all that? How is it this or that?
Part of me thinks a lot of people are like, what do you miss about eating or that old lifestyle? Mm-hmm. And honestly, once in a while, and honestly, this is maybe once a year, I'll get really mad that I can't eat volume. I cannot eat volume. There's something about this new surgery, this gastric sleeve, that you literally, I mean, at least in my experience, I can't stretch it out. And once a year or so, I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to feel all my feelings? I don't have drinks. I don't like booze. I don't like men anymore, or I'm not in a relationship, or I'm not doing this and I'm not doing that. Where's my bad thing? So I kind of like get mad that I have to feel all my feelings all the time, and it kind of sucks. But then I get to write a play about it, or make a joke about it, or write another thing, or blog, or whatever. Yeah. But that's the only thing I miss. But I will tell you, that the benefits far outweigh it. I'm like the super luckiest person to have been like, gotten the right surgery at the right time. But boy, occasionally you look at a plate of chicken and waffles and go, seriously, I used to be able to nail that thing. Oh, maybe in the next life.
Right. Yeah, I can so understand that. I can also relate to the rage or the fury, like, I don't have alcohol, I don't have cigarettes, I don't have this or that. Like, I just have to feel it. This sucks.
Feeling sucks.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's the only thing that heals you.
Mhm.
So obviously we need to do it, but every day, all day, oh goody. Yay.
I went through that phase in my very own way, just what you're talking about there. I
Oh
really
yeah.
lived through it. And I don't have that arising now. My recovery is decades. I'm very stable in this regard. So I don't get into that same kind of fury about why do I have to feel my feelings? But
Right.
sometimes I have my fury about certain kinds of feelings. Like,
Ah,
I don't like to feel like profoundly overwhelmed too often. And I know that sometimes I have a fury about that, and I can tell I'm getting into my 2-year-old tantrum about it. There's a body
yeah,
memory in there somewhere that just wants to explode. I do not like feeling overwhelmed or terrified.
right. I don't like feeling out of control,
Mm-hmm.
meaning like that I can't control everything in the situation. I don't like feeling like people are dropping the ball. So obviously that means I have a mistrust of other people. And it's just like, the only way I'm going to ever work on it if I have the feeling in the first place. So I guess food needs to be out of it. Damn.
Right. And the other thing is you get to work on it because it's actually showing up. I mean,
Yeah.
people are going to drop a ball. So it shows up that you have to feel the experience that you don't like of somebody else dropping the ball.
And you know what else I like too about that? You said you get to work on it. I really think that shift from have to into thinking of it, get to do this is so much better. Like when I coach a couple of girls about their careers, they would be like, well, I have to go 3 auditions and I have to do this. How would I get to go on 3 auditions? Oh my God. Do you know how lucky you are? You know how many people can't get auditions?
Yeah.
How would I get to? And yeah, it's sometimes just tricking yourself into thinking of it correctly. But you know what? Sometimes that's the only way to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we get to work on our feelings. And yes, we got to misbehave with food for a long time. Now we get to not beat ourselves up.
Yeah, yeah. So can I ask you a question about the actors in the play that you're doing? Without, intruding on their personal story or breaking their confidence, but how is it for them to play the role you've cast them in and to experience the other stories in the cast? I'm imagining that's a healing thing. Like,
I think so. I mean, I know yesterday when we did our big press conference for the show, Nikki, who's playing the big girl who likes herself, said no role has reached into her heart and really grabbed her like that since Hairspray. And she said, Mom, I have to, she said to her mom, she loves her mom so much. She goes, I ran up to her and I said, Mom, I have to play this girl. This is me. This is me. And I'm like, wow. So I can't even imagine finding an actor who's good enough to play that, who doesn't feel that. Yes, there are skilled actors out there who could do it, but she actually feels she's living that. And I'm like, oh my God, what a gift to the play and to the audience and to me and to herself and everybody else. The other girls, one of them did say to me, she goes, did you write this play knowing my story? This is me. And I'm like, really? Like, how lucky did I get? I cast her based on her nailing the audition. Her body type was perfect for the role. And her voice and just everything about her said this character. So it's like, she probably hasn't gone through any of this, but she's an actor. Mm-hmm. Suddenly she's telling me that. So I don't know. I think there's some magic going on. And yes, it is Hollywood and New York City theater. So, many women have food issues. But the fact that at least 2 out of 3 have lived these things, you go, well, we got
the 3 out of 4. Aren't you one of them?
Oh yeah, I can play myself.
So love that. Who is playing you? Are you playing you?
Yeah, but I do have an understudy because God forbid I get sick, and I'm not getting sick. I will go on stage with a bullet in my head before I let an understudy go on for me. But I got one anyway.
Yeah, you're taking good measures. Yeah.
Yeah, I figure, last year I learned a lot about self-care during the play because I'd never done something that was this work intensive other than The Apprentice, and that was just insane. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get at least 8 hours of sleep a night, which is very possible. And I can get no social life except one day a week. Just because, you know what? We all have a day off. Be an adult. See your friends and family that day. It worked. I didn't get sick once. I go, I learned how to do it. I'm going to do, and now I add in the healthy eating versus kind of weird snacking just because I'm a big baby. Well, I think I'm going to be fine.
You look radiant.
To God's ears, you know?
Yeah, I know you've been working really hard this summer, and I know you've got some miles on the road to go, and you just look radiant and really upbeat and expansive.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited.
I think you're going to make it.
Yay.
Yeah. Is there any last thing you want to say to someone listening to our conversation?
I just want to say, guess what? The work is never over, but it's always worth plowing through. And don't force it, just do it. And even if it's 2 steps back, 1 step up a lot of days, and a lot of days it's the opposite. Who cares? Guess what? You're doing more than you did last year. So just keep going. If I can do it, and I'm like not even that smart, like you can do it. And I was closed off emotionally. So even if you're closed off, crack it open a little more every day and just, it'll change.
That's beautiful. Very well said.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this time that we get to share with each other and with the listeners in the Telesummit. I really value your story, your life, your personhood, who you are, who you've been, who you're becoming. I just feel so fortunate to know you.
Oh, me too. Thank you. Honestly changed my life. And listen, I'm not saying this is a shameless plug, but I kind of am. If you come see my play, anyone out there, I really have heard from audience members in the past that at least one or more of the characters has really resonated with them, and it's helped them feel a little bit better about themselves. So if you're in the New York City area in the next 6 months, just come see us at stuffplay.com and check it out. I think you'll really, I'd love to hear from you too, what you thought.
Beautiful, beautiful, so wonderful. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you.
Okay.
You too, baby.